Welcome back. Now, being jobless is a reality for at least 6.2 million people in South Africa. The economic climate is tough and businesses are tightening their belts. Today, we're focusing on retrenchments, the pain, the depression and the fallout. I'm joined in studio by two young professionals who lost their jobs this year, Sindisiwe, Thwala, as well as Peter Sefatsa. We're also joined from our Cape Town studios by labour consultant Tony Healy. He'll be joining us a little bit later on in the conversation. Happy Sunday. Thank you so much for joining us, guys. Cindy, let me start with you. How are you, first of all?
I'm good. I'm blessed, highly favoured. Yeah.
Amen. Let's go back to the moment when you heard that there's retrenchments happening in the company. Did you know at all what retrenchments were even about or what was happening?
Unlike most people, I'm a final year law student, so at least I'd read up on what retrenchment looks like. From other people that I worked with actually told me that this is what retrenchment looks like also from their practical experiences. But what we essentially experienced was completely different to what Chapter 189 of the Labour Relations Act says. When there's a person involved, it's quite different, as well as people who are breadwinners. Our situation was quite painful because it didn't happen the way we expected it to. We're not told that we would be retrenched until we were retrenched. We then had to go to court for the retrenchment process to start, meaning the consultation between our representatives, being the trade union as well as the employer, as well as in that process to find out how exactly we're going to be compensated. A lot of people were throwing out the term severance pay. But what it actually boils down to is not what a lot of people know or expect it to be. People hear the term and think, yo, a lot of money is coming my way, but only to find that severance pay is 1 week of every year worked. So if you're a young graduate who has only been working for a year and a half, that's 1 week and a half of severance pay. This is excluding the 3 months that you might get if proper process was taken. So for us, or for me rather, and the people that I worked with, it was completely horrible.
Sure. Peter, I mean, from the picture that Cindy paints, it's not a pretty picture at all. One would think that also perhaps HR is involved it's a most definite HR should be involved in this process. Did it make things easier or not?
Well, for me personally, I was always in contact with my manager who, like, the writing was on the wall that things aren't looking good at the company. So he was always telling us that, guys, prepare. And then finally the process started. We were consulted, we were called into the office. And after that, the procedure went pretty quickly. And we were all happy with the outcome, basically, because we were on contract work, yearly contracts, so we weren't sure if our contracts would be renewed. So we knew that this year, that because of the climate, as well as a lot of issues within the company, that led to us being retrenched. So we actually accepted it as a team.
Right. Are we able to share some of those issues? If you're comfortable.
Yeah. Well, I was at Trudon, and I'm sure most people know they're going through financial difficulties due to the Yellow Pages book no longer being used. They've lost a lot of advertising revenue, so they had to cut costs, and our jobs was one of them.
Sure. So two very different experiences. Tony, you join us from our Cape Town studios and listening in on this conversation. How retrenchment literate are we as employees in this country? Firstly, let's start with that.
Well, good morning. And my experience is that employers are seldom so-called retrenchment literate. And it's a pity because the section in the Labour Relations Act, Section 189, is fairly short and is well explained. So if anyone was facing retrenchment, if they were to read Section 189 of the Labour Relations Act, they would quite quickly have a good idea as to what their rights are and what procedures need to be followed.
Right. And speaking of rights, as Cindy mentioned, theirs was rather an abrupt process. In that case, what rights do employees have?
Well, look, in the event that an employee believes that the procedure is unfair or that the reason is unfair for the retrenchment, they have the same right as any other employee who feels they're unfairly dismissed. and that is to refer the case to the CCMA, and that's a fairly simple process, and that needs to be referred within 30 days from the date on which the retrenchment took place. So if an employee or a retrenched employee went to a local CCMA office, they would assist that employee in completing the necessary documentation.
Cindy, in your case, did you seek legal advice after that, or you just cut all ties and that was that?
What we did, as opposed to what the process is referring, is that we didn't go to the CCMA individually, but rather it was referred by our trade union to the Labour Court. So what happened is that the Labour Court looked at the matter, assessed the matter, and he ruled in our favor. Basically, what was said that the employee should have instituted a proper dismissal, meaning the process should have been followed. Consultation should have taken place with the representatives, meaning the trade union, as well as a consultation leading up to the retrenchment and finding out how best to cushion us. It's not an ideal situation, but how do we survive this? So the fact that our employer did not do that, in his argument in the court papers that he filed, he said that he didn't contemplate that there was a retrenchment. He actually hoped that he'd be able to continue because it was reliant on a contract basis. So he had applied for another contract, but he couldn't get it. So that was also understandable. But for us who are breadwinners at the end of the day, without that consultation, without that 3 months, and him saying that he doesn't have money to pay us, or the company doesn't have money to pay us for the 3 months consultation as envisaged in the Act, it put us in a rather awkward situation. We hear, you say you don't have money to pay us, but what do we do?
Yeah.
People have cars, people have houses.
You have responsibilities.
People have responsibilities, student loans and the likes. What do we do? So that was, unfortunately, he's saying it's quite simple, go to CCMA, but the transport going to CCMA, the time, the pain, the worry, am I going to get something month end? Am I going to be paid? Am I still an employee? Also the confusion, because we only got our letters that we're retrenched only after the court case. So in the meantime, what am I? Am I employed? Am I not? Because if I don't have proper documentation saying that I'm retrenched, I can't even get UIF. Where am I in this situation? So practically it doesn't work out as it's written in textbooks.
Yeah, no. Yeah, that's true. Life and reality and what you read in the books is totally different. Peter, for you, was there proper consultation?
Yes, there was. The company actually did follow procedures properly and were consulted in terms of looking at solutions in order to try avoid it, but unfortunately we couldn't find anything that could save our jobs.
Tony, you sometimes hear companies say, we will try by all means, this will be the last resort when it comes to retrenchments. We will try and place you elsewhere in departments instead of getting rid of you. Is that enough? I know it's an unfair question because sometimes when there's no money, there's no money.
Well, look, that's certainly one of the things that an employer must look at, and is very often the only option available to an employer when they're faced with staff reductions. But the consultation process goes beyond merely checking or establishing whether there is alternative employment within the company. If you read the Labour Relations Act, if you read the case law, the consultation process is really required to attempt to reach consensus on three things. One, can the retrenchment as proposed be avoided? Two, can the timing be delayed? And three, if the retrenchment can't be avoided, are there ways of mitigating the adverse effects of the retrenchment? And that really has to do with when does the employee leave, how much money do they leave with, etc. But as you've rightly pointed out, very often the only alternative is there another position within the organization? And when employers are under stress, often, unfortunately, there aren't any such positions and the retrenchment needs to be confirmed.
Peter, let's talk personally, the impact that this has had on you. How difficult or easy was it to re-enter the job market?
It's been quite challenging, but thank goodness for my family, the support system I have. The transition, I haven't gone back into the job market, but instead I've started my own company. So, yeah. that's where I'm at right now.
Right. Would you say that sometimes, when things happen, you think, oh, what am I going to do? But there's a blessing in
Yeah, I think this is a little fire under me.
Yeah.
Because it's always been in the pipeline, but now I have to move on it. Yeah.
Right. Cindy, for you?
I was lucky enough, unlike most, that while the retrenchment process was happening, certain people I'd met, because of where I've worked before, called me up and offered me a position. It's not ideal, but they offered me a position, so I didn't have to wake up month end and wonder what am I going to do. So I had something. But like he's saying, I also have other things that I'm thinking about doing. Like I also mentioned, I'm almost done with my second qualification. So actually it was like, maybe it's time to bow out of this industry and try to pursue another one. So that's the situation that I'm in. But for many others that I'm still in contact with, it's looking quite bleak.
So you have to find yourself like almost realigning the way you thought. But when you talk about those where it's looking quite bleak, what is the situation?
Some people are always asking me if is there something you've heard of. We're always in communication. Can you assist? All of that. And some have had to actually go home. The packing up, the going back home. Maybe you were the only person who was bringing in some form of income. You now have to go back home, look at people you went to school with and be like, I honestly don't know what my next move is right now. Applying constantly. Like a lot of the people I speak to, like myself as well, we still apply, even though you're employed, are constantly applying and there's no responses. These are people with honors degrees. These are people with master's degrees and normal junior degrees. So it also has an adverse effect on the communities they go to because people looked up to them. That these people, if you go to school, you get a qualification, you're going to get a good job, your life is going to be well. That's the plan. Now, loans were taken out to take you to school. You come back now after working for 5 years. Some of them worked for 5 years, and you don't even have a package. What do you have? It's horrible.
Yeah, it's gut-wrenching indeed. Tony, if you're not satisfied with the CCMA process, there have been people who haven't, who feel as if the process was biased in favor of the employer. What option do you then have?
Well, I think the first thing to understand is that if you look at the statistics in the CCMA and how these cases are handled, very many employees do win these cases. And overall, in terms of unfair dismissal claims, the split between who wins and who loses is 50-50. So, and I think as time has gone by, the CCMA has become increasingly reliable in terms of the kinds of awards that are made. But like anyone who loses at the CCMA has the potential to refer their case on review to the Labour Court. But unfortunately, and especially for private persons, that can be an expensive and a time-consuming process. So invariably, if any party loses at the CCMA, by and large, that's where the case ends.
Peter, you know it's so simple for a person to sit from their position of comfort or position of privilege and say, man, we mustn't rely on being employed. Start your own business. You talk now about starting something of your own, but that in itself also comes with its own challenges.
Definitely. Yeah, fortunately for me, I come from a business background. We've got family businesses, so the transition wasn't too difficult for me. But I could imagine for someone who doesn't really have that plan or entrepreneurial spirit, it could be quite difficult and challenging.
Cindy, you're a very strong person, and strength is by no stretch of the imagination an absence of weakness, but you are a very strong person. For people who have lost their jobs, who find themselves in a difficult position, like you outlined a few moments ago, words of encouragement, perhaps just a word to lift somebody to say, things will turn around.
What I would advise, rather not the person who's just been retrenched, because I'm still in that process. Even though I got employment, I still think like I just got retrenched because I didn't see it coming. Rather to people who are still in tertiary or at school or still thinking about pursuing different careers, have a backup. That's what I'd like to say. It's not like way back where you are a teacher and you know that you're going to get employment. Have a backup. I'm thankful that my parents always said, always put your things in different baskets just in case life happens. Had it not been for that, I don't know if I'd be speaking like this, because I would then also be at the mercy of my current employer, because we don't know what's going to happen with the current situation. So always try, if possible, to broaden your horizon, get a qualification, get another one. Because not everyone is an entrepreneur, like you rightfully said. Other people are employees. If possible, do one qualification and do something that's related, but that could open different kinds of doors in case this happens.
Tony Healy, Labour Consultant from our Cape Town studios, thank you very much for joining us. Sindisiwe, Thwala, thank you very much for joining us and having a candid conversation with us, and good luck with your studies. And Peter Sefatsa, thank you very much, and good luck with your business. Any way we can support, we're here. Just let us know where we go and what to do and where to find it. Thank you very much for joining us. Do stay with us. We're back with more After Your Weather with Joel Guy.